Welcome to Breaking Silence, a safe and brave space where we have real conversations about race in America. I think it might also be good for us to dive into a little bit and actually get more specific about what it means when we say it's systemic racism. What does that really mean? How does that play out? Just in everyday life, basically.
So Google says systemic racism, also known as institutional racism. It's a form of racism that's embedded as normal practice within society or an organization. It can lead to such issues as discrimination and criminal justice, employment, housing, healthcare, political power, and education, among other issues. So I feel like I relate to and I align with that definition. The fact that it's embedded in these systems that we have almost no choice in America. We have almost no choice of participating in. We don't have, we are part of the education system. We are part of the healthcare system. I don't have a choice to be a part of it. And there is racism and racist beliefs and laws and practices that are just embedded in these systems that I have to take a part of by being an American.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what would be an example of an institutional practice that we don't really think about that promotes or that benefits white people?
The first thing that comes to mind is with healthcare and with clinical trials and research and cures and antidotes where there's tests going on, and the majority of the people that are part of the tests are white. And so the results are based on this group, and there might be some differences that are serious or really affect other people, and those people weren't part of the tests, so we don't have that data. We don't know how it affects this group of people, or this because of, I don't know, some other genetic or long-standing issues like high blood pressure or something, right? Black people, there's certain diseases that affect the Black community a lot stronger in a lot stronger way, and that's not taken into consideration. And so when you come and you try to get your medicine or your antidote or your whatever, it hasn't been tested on people like you. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. But
and see, that's one I did not know. I would have thought if they're testing that they're doing a sample that's representative of the group that they would be launching that medication to.
Yeah, and if you look at COVID-19, for example, so we know that a large portion of the essential workers are Black and brown people. If you think about I don't know, warehouse and groceries and retail that has to be open, that's essential, right? A lot of Black and brown people have these jobs, and so they're being exposed at different rates. And do they have the ability, because of the communities that are majority Black or brown, do they have the access to healthcare that everybody else does? So mobile testing sites, are mobile testing sites popping up in the most underprivileged and underserved communities? Are all communities equal with the access?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The answer is no, right? What we've seen is no, and companies have to be really intentional about what communities am I serving? Am I serving the communities that truly need me and need me to step up? And am I serving them in the way that they need to be served, or am I doing a one-size-fits-all approach, and really the one-size-fits-all is tailored to a white demographic? I think we talked about two educational systemic issues with education, because you live in a neighborhood, you pay taxes that goes to your school district. If you're in a more affluent neighborhood, usually more white people, you have more taxes, more money that go to those schools. And if you're in a underprivileged community, you have a lot more Black and brown people, so the less taxes, less money to go to those schools. And so it's just, you have less resources. You have a head start if you're in one place versus another. And that's just how it is as you continue to go up. When you think about mentors, resources in school, technology, seeing people that representation, seeing people that look like you. And so this is a system, this educational system we're a part of. Everybody is not starting at the same place.
Yeah.
That's me, uneducated, not an expert on these, on systemic issues and institutional practices, just saying what I've seen and learned.
No, yeah, absolutely. Well, and what I was thinking too, as you were saying that, is, you know, there's pockets of people who would say, like, well, if you're still living in these underserved communities or these underprivileged areas, I mean, how many years has it been since we stopped slavery? Or how many years has it been since we stopped segregation? And how many years has it been since blah, 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 right? That, so if you're still living there, clearly you're not doing something right, or you're not trying hard enough, because this is America, and because we're America, anybody can achieve anything that they put their mind to, and if they try hard enough, I mean, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I've heard that from people in my interpersonal circle too. Actually, the same friend who challenged me on my definition of racism had a conversation with one of my a person in my inner circle, just talking through that, and I got to hear, you know, be a bystander and watch that exchange go back and forth. So I know that it's real. I know that this is not just a thing like, oh, some people might be saying, and you might see this on Twitter, on social media. No, like, this is real. These are real people that consider themselves good people, not racist people, that feel everybody's equal. Now it's 2020, everybody's equal, everybody's starting from the same place. So I just want to underscore how that is not like a hypothetical, that is not like 3 degrees removed. That is here. That is people honestly looking into my eyes and saying this to me, believing it.
So for folks who may not see or understand, or they're coming from that viewpoint, I you know, one of the things that you and I had talked about was, and I forget where you said that you had heard this, with the Monopoly game. Like, that might be a really great example of explaining how, I mean, you kind of alluded to it with the Head Start thing that you just said, but I don't know, I think it just may be helpful for people to hear that.
What you're referring to is a social media post that had gone viral, actually, and I just looked it up on Instagram. The person who posted is Kimberly Latrice Jones, so that's her handle, at Kimberly Latrice Jones. She was also interviewed at The Daily Show. If you follow The Daily Show, you can check her out there. But there was a clip posted from her just explaining what was going on with riots and why, kind of what I took away from it was why Black people are so angry. Like, angry. Oh, and at the end, this really sat with me. At the end, she says a quote. She says, y'all are lucky, something, I'm paraphrasing. So something like, y'all are lucky we're demanding equality and not looking for revenge. Like, after she explained the whole thing, and I was like, whoa, that is huge. That's heavy. Because what she explained was, in the concept of a Monopoly game, like you said, if we're playing Monopoly together and we play 400 rounds, and for those 400 rounds, Jen, you're able to play and amass wealth and property just like normal. And every play I make, it's going to somebody else. And that is, you know, the metaphor for slavery. For 400 years, a Black person like me would be working, and what we're building, farming, wealth, land, it's all going to somebody else. And so that's 400 rounds, right? And then after those 400 rounds, we say, okay, so now y'all can all play fair. Now let's all play for each other, like each man for himself. So we're playing, but you've got all this that you've gained over the past 400 rounds, and I'm starting off at the beginning, and so it's not fair, right? What you have and the position in society and power you have from the land ownership, the real estate, the fun you've been having for the past 400 rounds, right? Versus mine, like, it's not the same.
Well, and let's not forget that there was probably around 100 rounds where you got to play, but like you couldn't buy Park Place or Boardwalk.
Yeah, well,
You're buying Baltic, and
that's even,
I mean
yeah.
that is like another 100 rounds in the middle there. Mm-hmm.
Well, what Kimberly Latrice Jones was saying, even after those 400 rounds, there's 50 more rounds that we're playing fair. And then speaking to what happened with Black Wall Street, which I don't know if you're familiar. Have you ever heard of that, Black Wall Street?
Mm-mm.
Because I hadn't heard of it called that. She was actually the first person that introduced me to it. So shame right now, but 50 years Black people were allowed. We're playing equal, right? But 50 years Black people in Rosewood, Tulsa, had gained all of this wealth and built this, and they were bombed. And we probably need to look this up. I don't want to misquote. I'm like really hesitant because I don't want to misquote any facts, but that Black people had amassed, that they were in these areas, concentrated areas, and they were affecting Wall Street, and they had amassed this wealth, and they were bombed and had to start all over. And so you got your 400 rounds of Monopoly, then you got these 50 rounds where you thought you were playing fair, and then you were able to build, and then that was all taken away from you and bombed. So that's 50 years, 50 rounds of Monopoly, right? And then now we're playing fair. And then maybe some of what you're saying, like not allowed to buy the fancy neighborhoods or be in these certain places. You're redlined. You have to stay in these areas. So if you think about it from the Monopoly perspective, yes, slavery is over. Yes, all of that is behind us. But is it really? Because some people have this immense head start, and the rest of us are trying to build and catch up. And not to mention, not just the physical and the material goods associated with that, but what about what that does for your mind and your self-esteem and your self-worth, and how worthy am I? Can I do this? Can I get to this level? Can I see myself here? Can I even aspire for these levels that other people are, or do I need to stay in my lane?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think that speaks to the cycle of it as well, right? So we've got these 400 rounds where, white people are taking everything. Then we have the 50 or so rounds where, we've got segregation happening. And then that ends. Now, just because the law changes, right, it doesn't necessarily mean that what's really happening has changed. And so I'm sure even longer than that. And still happening. I mean, look at what has happened in Georgia in the last 6 weeks or 2 months. So the fact that there aren't the resources, right? So going back to your point on education, there's not the resources. You're in an underserved community. You're paying taxes into your county. Your county funds your schooling. Your schooling is your education. The education of your children is your future. And so if the education is not quality, right, now those children have a disadvantage because the quality of their education is not as great. And so the opportunities afforded to them in the future may not be as good. Then on top of that, you've got, I believe there are research studies that show when you have defendants in court, right, and one is white or one is Black, that the sentencing is not equal, that we have unconscious bias on how we, like if you are sentenced by a jury of your peers, it is not equitable. Mm-hmm. So then even if there's a white family and a Black family that are committing the same crime, now that Black family is without this member of their household for longer, right? So now there's not as much resource coming into the household. Or how that disrupts like the familial pattern of having like a solid, like we've got mom, we've got dad, we've got grandparents, we've got, we have this community to help to raise these kids to be able to do more and accomplish and go further than the generation prior. But those are the types of things I think of when we're talking about like systemic racism, that it's like just built into how we function. And then I hear white people say things like, well, Black people are committing 50% of the crime and they're only 15% of the population. And, these types of things that it's like, okay, well, first I need to fact check that. I mean, is that really what's happening? And then if it is, what are the contributing factors to that? Because to simply say, well, you're just more likely to commit a crime because you have more melanin in your skin is completely ridiculous.
Yeah, but to say you're more likely to commit a crime because of the systems you were born into and
And
the
what you know.
and the societal pushes and pulls, headwinds and tailwinds, that's not wrong. And I think that's what comes to the point where you're like, okay, so what? Like now, what do you do? And white people, that's what we're saying. Like you benefit from a system that makes this true in some cases. So what can you do? What is all of our responsibility as Americans to make sure that this stops? Because it shouldn't be like this.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what a lot of white people in my inner circle want to say is, I'm not a part of it. That's not me. That's not on me. Because I know my heart is good. My heart is true. And with my definition of racism, I'm not in the wrong. I've been living my life good. So the action is not required of me.
Right. And I think the conversations you and I have had I mean, I won't say I'm woke. I mean, I don't, there's just, I know there's so much that I don't know, right? But I will say, I feel like over the last month, I see more. I think it is more apparent to me, especially when I am seeing white people justify or defend or not be open to understanding, right? So for example, like the racist thing, and it's like, well, I'm not a racist, you know. I think 6 weeks ago, not that I would have been on that. Well, no, I mean, if that was my definition, I probably would have been a part of that. If I'm being honest, like if you had asked me, are you racist? I would have been like, I'm not racist. But I think that what I was trying to say, the other shift that I feel is that I get the point now that just not being racist is like not enough, right? It's not enough for me to just be nice to Black people or any minority group, right? I have to, and it may not end up being like my life's cause and my life's work where I'm, you know, throwing myself and dedicating all of my time and energy to it, but I have to be a voice. I have to speak up when I see things. And in the past, you know, if I had ever seen someone being hated on for their skin color or being treated poorly, I have intervened. You know, that's not something that I would let go. But I think being more proactive versus reactive is like the shift that's happened for me. Like I need to be more involved, and you know, even this blog is part of that, right? Like how it's not necessarily going out and volunteering in my community, but how are we putting ourselves out there to try and create a shift. But all of that came from that conversation around the different definitions and what it really means in this country for us.
I think that's key. That's a key point. Like it came from that conversation and just forcing yourself maybe to sit in some discomfort with maybe being not as right as you thought you were, or being open to another definition, and that inspires you to look at what you can do different. And I think that's like the whole point of what we're doing and the talks that we're having and sharing the talks that we're having, because when these conversations aren't happening, that opportunity for exploration is not there. So I think when you think of like what to do, for me, it started with making sure I am more involved in politics. I have had the privilege to be aloof and not involved, and for me, like that's where my action needs to start. I relocated from Florida to California a year and a half ago now, and I'm still registered to vote in Florida. Like, why? I need to be registered in California. I need to be involved in the state, in the local levels, and I need to show up and vote. Like, that's what I need to do. So that's what the conversations have been pushing me to do, making me realize that I've been comfortable. I've been comfortable with the discomfort of being in these systems and assimilating myself and normalizing things. I've been comfortable just chugging along, and that's no longer okay, because I think it's everybody's responsibility to interrupt racism. And I think I've shared with you, like, sometimes I felt ashamed that I haven't spoken up when things have made me uncomfortable or a comment has been wrong, and I've just tried to, continue on and not get upset, not ruin the night. But it's all of our job to interrupt racism, whether it's happening right in front of our eyes or whether it's happening in our state policies and laws that are coming to pass. But you participate and you benefit from racist systems, not doing anything about it. I think that would be, for me, that would be more accurate. I think it would be easier for that person to swallow too, which I don't know then. I'm like, okay, well, is that right or wrong? Are they a racist?
Well, some people are.
People are.
Some people are. I mean, there are people who legitimately believe that white people are superior. They are out there. But I think, I don't want to speak for you personally. I don't know if my goal is to really reach those people. I think those people, they believe what they believe for whatever reasons they believe it. And I don't know that a vlog is going to help give them a paradigm shift. That's something I think, if they were to change their belief system, would require a lot of internal reflection or personal experiences. And I do believe that those people are a minority group. I think I like to believe, I don't know, maybe I'm very ignorant, but that people who are actively campaigning that type of propaganda is a small group of people. And what I think the majority of people are good-hearted individuals who believe that they're doing the right thing every single day, do their best to treat people differently from them fairly, and because they are not being negatively impacted by the way in which we live our lives, they do not have that pain to go out and do something about it. So they're just existing in what's happening. And I think just some light bulb moments might really help to inspire a lot of those people to think a little bit differently than how they have in the past.
Yeah. I think, there is, I have to remind myself, right, that there's certain people that I am going to reach and certain people that I'm not going to reach. And that's that. I think I agree with what you say, that the people, that it's a small group of people that are racist, or maybe that group that we can't reach is a small group of people. I agree that's a small group of people. I do want to say I think it's bigger than we think it is, though. I think what we'd like to encourage people to do is to research definitions of racism for yourself, to see where you feel most aligned to, what definitions land with you. And if some definitions trigger you or offend you, as happened to me on April 3rd, because I sure did look it up in WhatsApp to see what day my friend had offended me. If that happens, that you take a moment and stop and ask yourself, why? And is there any other truth? Is there any other way that you could see one of these other definitions as productive, like a productive definition based on what's happening in the world? If you found a definition that you want to share with others, we'd love to see it and hear it and read about it and get informed. And if you find one that more closely aligns with you.
Are there maybe others that we haven't even talked about? that are out there that we don't have awareness of. So we'd love to hear those too. And I know we touched a little bit tangentially on a couple different topics. So if there's anything in regards to this conversation that you would like us to dive into more deeply, also leave that in the comments below and we will add that to our list.
All right, so I have a quote I'd like to share this week, and I read it. So if I read it on social media, just randomly somewhere. So if anyone can tag the source, I would be really grateful. But the quote said, "Now is not the time to be fragile," and that really has sat with me and stuck with me because I'm a emotional being, and a lot of what's going on, what I see in the news, in the media, and what I hear from my friends and family, it's really affecting me. And there's a danger of having that stop me, stop my growth, stop my courage, my bravery through these conversations, stop the way I even show up at work professionally. And so I keep that quote close in these times, that now is not the time to be fragile. Now is the time for us to lean in and be brave.
Yeah, I would just add, my message every episode, but especially as you're engaging in these conversations around definitions of racism or talking to others and sharing your thoughts and maybe hearing things that are kind of an affront, maybe the first time that you hear them, to continue to choose kindness. So choose kindness, y'all. See you next time.